Hello, I'm Luis from InHealth Advisors, and I'm here to ask the question, what's your problem? Whether you're a newly minted physician or a seasoned healthcare executive, we at InHealth are here to help solve your biggest problems in healthcare in 5 minutes or less. So let's get started. I was recently listening to the Lex Friedman interview of Jeff Bezos on Lex Friedman's podcast recently, and Mr. Bezos had a quote that really stood out to me. It reads, "When the data and the anecdotes disagree, the anecdotes are usually right." And this quote stuck out to me and it reminded me of a problem that we run into regularly with clients of ours when the physician salary survey data that we're looking at doesn't quite match the reality of what either physicians or healthcare administrators are hearing from folks in the marketplace with regard to what market pay is. This is really a case of the anecdotes and the data not agreeing. It very well may be the case that the anecdotes tell a truth that the data doesn't necessarily reveal on its face. To see why this may be true, let's talk about a helpful tool called the MEB framework. The letters MEB in the framework refer to three categories of forces that influence provider compensation. M stands for market forces, your typical supply and demand. E stands for effort, the effort involved in delivering the services in the form of minimum workload requirements. While B refers to benefits, those are all the extras that providers receive as part of their compensation plan. Let's dive and look at the three in more detail. M. M refers to market factors. There's a number of different market factors that can influence provider pay. Here are a few that we come across quite regularly. The first is supply shocks. A lot of times there are changes in a marketplace that can influence the supply curve for providers and either shift it outwards, that is, increase the supply of providers in a marketplace, or shift it inwards, decrease the supply. Some common examples of a positive supply curve shift that moves the curve out would include things like changes to uh, advanced practice professional licensing requirements that loosen the restrictions around the ability for those providers to practice. In other words, what that means is there's more folks that are able to supply professional healthcare services, shifting the supply curve outwards. An example of a negative supply shock would be somewhat like what happened during COVID, where we had a lot of retirements among physicians that reduced the available supply of providers. Another important market force is fee for service reimbursement for services. There are some marketplaces where reimbursement for physician healthcare services is very, very high, some places where it's really low. And it tends to be the case that the higher the level of reimbursement, the greater the level of compensation that providers earn in those marketplaces. The final factor that's worth considering is local economic factors. This might be things like cost of living. For example, I live in the state of Colorado, and if you look at a marketplace like Aspen, where it's relatively remote, but the cost to live there is quite high, it typically is the case that providers in a marketplace like that are going to require a higher level of compensation to support their ability to live and continue to practice there, particularly if they're in a specialty like emergency medicine or hospitalist medicine, where they have to be in close proximity to the facility they're covering. E stands for effort, or the minimum workload requirements necessary to earn the compensation in the arrangement. While we're all pretty familiar with effort measures like work RVUs, there's other types of measures that influence effort as well. They include things like quality improvement requirements. How much effort does the provider have to expend in improving the patient experience or reducing the cost of care, for example? Other effort measures include shift requirements, the number of days that a provider has to be on site at a facility or take call. There's a really vivid example occurred over COVID where some providers were looking at contracts that said they only had to work half the year, 180 days a year. But when you dug into their workload requirement, every day that that provider had to be working, they needed to be on call 24 hours a day. And this was for CRNAs, and those providers tended to be called into the facility quite often. So a pretty high level of work effort. B. B stands for benefits. These are the extras that are given to a provider above and beyond the compensation under a payment arrangement. Typically, the greater the benefits or the more above the normal market level, the lower the compensation. Benefits include things like student loan repayment, reimbursement for continuing medical education, above market insurance benefits like short term disability, and other benefits such as exemption from call, say if a provider has been working at a facility for a set period of time. Again, the more generous these benefits, typically the lower the compensation for a provider tends to be in return. All right, just in time. So, to review, if the survey data you're seeing doesn't match the reality of other offers in the marketplace, you can investigate the disconnect by applying the MEB framework. First, start by taking a look at market forces, such as any shifts in the supply of providers, reimbursement in the area, as well as cost of living. Then you can move on to looking at the minimum effort requirements, paying close attention to, for example, quality, needs, on site or on call shift requirements. Finally, you can conclude by taking a look at the benefits package and comparing it to norms in the marketplace. We hope that the MEB framework helps you solve enigmas and compensation data that you come across. If you need help with this or any other business challenge in healthcare, the experts at InHealth Advisors are eager to share our insights with you, so don't hesitate to reach out. We'll see you next time. Bye.